Thanks, everyone.
Hi, everyone. My name is Shelley Walton Moore, and I'm here today to present an exploratory study done by Dr. Pbl and myself. The title of our exploratory study is Adopting a Project-Based Learning Framework in an Online Course to Enhance the Quality of Student Projects. Now, to help set the stage, in the graduate level curriculum, there were 2 courses at the end of the master's program designed to specifically help students propose, design, develop, implement, and evaluate an instructional design problem. These resulted in their master's projects, which were all technology-based e-learning products. What we found over time is that students rarely finished either one of these courses in their allotted time. And in most instances, we were lucky if the students finished their master's project in 9 months. A variety of variables necessitated a curriculum change, and eventually we eliminated both of those 2 courses dedicated to this master's project. So that begged the question, when and where would students have a chance to complete projects that would give them real world experience and also be able to put them in their e-portfolio, which is in essence an essential requirement of any employment job search in the field? Well, what was decided in the curriculum is that one class, an instructional design class, would be reworked and piloted to frame out a project-based learning scenario for the students. And we would see if in this 7-week online course, students could not only learn the instructional design content, but see what they were capable of producing at the end. Much to our surprise, we were delighted to find the quality end products, these technology-based products in 7 weeks, were equal, if not superior, to the original master's projects. And to remind you, some of those took upwards of 9 months, some took longer, some took a little bit less, but I would say the majority took 9 months. So how in 7 weeks did we end up with students producing quality technology-based master's quality projects, evidenced solid instructional design principles in those projects, and where we saw a higher usage of e-learning technologies that are cutting edge in the field? That led us to explore these research questions. How was project-based learning adopted in the design of the course? And what is the quality of learning since the adoption of the project-based learning approach? For our research methods, we chose an exploratory case study. The unit of analysis was considered an actual course. So you take the courses before the curriculum elimination and the course after the modification. And we used a comparative method to qualitatively analyze the before and the after. Some of the data collection items that we included were notes from the instructor, including curriculum maps, learning outcomes, and reflections. The actual course content, such as the syllabus, the modules, videos, and discussion forums, assessments, if they were available, including instructions, rubrics, feedback, and grades, communications, such as emails, assignment comments, pop-up office hours, and course evaluations, including qualitative comments. It is worthy to note that not all of these items were available in the prior curriculum that was eliminated. There was much more of this available in the revised adopted course. So the data analysis was the examination and comparison of these products as they existed between these courses. And from that, a categorization emerged and patterns were fit to those categories. So the initial data analysis examined the above items and looked for patterns as a means to provide explanation building of the phenomena under investigation. Now, we don't have much time today, so what we found were the following three primary categories. And because of our lack of time, we're going to focus primarily on project-based learning today. In addition to project-based learning, we found that there were absolutely instructional design frameworks and models that were used that were facilitated the successful journey of these students. And third, we also were able to categorize multiple learning theories that were drawn upon to help design and frame this class. So back to the question, how was the project-based learning pedagogical framework adopted in the design of this course? And I will preface the next phase by saying that we hope that you find the way that this has been packaged helpful as takeaways to anyone who may be potentially designing or using this framework or is interested in using this framework in their own classrooms. So first of all, one of the key principles that we found evidenced was that an ill-defined problem was used to frame their technology-based problems within a real-world context. So all students had an ill-defined problem, and all students operated in a real-world context. We used a needs assessment survey to send out to all of these graduate level students in the class or not in the class. The results yielded multiple knowledge gap areas. So true self-reported knowledge gaps within the instructional design field. So this again yields real needs. So this then becomes the ill-defined problem housed in a real world context. Now, secondly, we found evidence of a project-based learning framework in that students were engaged in finding their own design solutions. So students were in essence asked to develop a quality instructional design project that would be e-learning, and it would be a solution to a legitimate knowledge gap within the instructional design community. Now, students, we knew what topic they were going to select from the needs assessment survey, but how they got from that topic to their e-learning solution was 100% up to them. They were tasked with discovering what the actual need is, what technology would fit and make the most sense to teaching that information. Along with that, is the technology attainable? Can they afford it? Is there a license? Do they have time to learn it? And they were also tasked with locating support for their selected technology. Multiple technologies were used often by each student, and it was impossible for the faculty member to be an expert on all of those. So the student was asked to become a very knowledgeable individual with regard to any technologies that they decided to use. Third, we saw another principle of project-based learning evidenced. We saw a lot of collaborations. And in this regard, the students in the class were asked to serve as the role of an instructional designer, and they were referred to throughout the course by that title. And they were also tasked with not only being an instructional designer, but asked to serve as a coach and a mentor, a resource for other students in the class. This was especially evident in the discussion forum, where they were encouraged to ask all public questions and get help. This was also evidenced in pop-up office hours, where the faculty member facilitated questions, and the faculty member, instead of being the sage on the stage and always giving the answer, helped probe and facilitate the students to help finding creative solutions among themselves. So while they worked collaboratively together, they still had individual accountability for their final e-learning technology projects. So the collaboration was an important component here. Now, a fourth principle that we saw was very integrated and intentional scaffolding. We saw this from faculty to learner and learner to learner. So the primary things I'd like to review here were the strategic ways we saw the faculty scaffolding the students. First of all, the faculty member agreed to serve as the subject matter expert in the instructional design field. They recognized that students came to them at varied levels on the continuum of experience. Most were novices, some were moderate in their knowledge, and one or two would be considered advanced knowledge of instructional design. They supported and guided the individuals from day one through to the end. They were especially coherent and acknowledged when they sensed cognitive overload. And when this happened, well, there was 24/7 support asynchronously, but when they saw a drastic increase in inquiries and the cognitive overload, people feeling overwhelmed, pop-up office hours were offered throughout the day, sometimes at lunch, sometimes at night, phone calls on the weekend, etc. And rich feedback was provided. A fifth principle that we saw was assessment and reflection. All students were given an iterative process and they were allowed to revise until key indicators were met. They were not allowed to move forward with projects until these certain key indicators were met, because that helped ensure the solid instructional design principles were indeed infused into their projects. They were provided with rich, detailed feedback. They provided feedback to each other when they finally did release their final projects to each other. They served as students in that other person's project, and they served as instructional designers providing feedback. And ultimately, all of the feedback came back to them. And then they, again, as an instructional designer, reflected on their own instructional design process. What we noticed throughout was the integration of the Pbl framework. It was carefully planned. It intentionally rolled out weekly in a two-phased approach. In the beginning of the week, it was assumed that students knew nothing about certain topics, and so they were scaffolded at the knowing and comprehension level of critical thinking, and then asked to assume higher levels of critical thinking each week, and they were given the opportunity to then apply what they were learning. So this two-phased approach of learning and then application of it happened every week, along with multiple assessments. And this was from beginning to end. And we noticed that it was a very flexible classroom. It was not rigid. It was structured, but everybody had freedom and flexibility and a lot of choice. Now, ultimately, what was the quality of learning with this adopted Pbl approach? What we found was that 100% met or exceeded the e-learning project deliverable in under 7 weeks. And 100% met or exceeded targeted course learning outcomes in those 7 weeks. So in the comparison to where the curriculum was before, and we struggled to get students to this caliber of a final project in 9 months, this was definitely a robust learning experience for us. And we definitely felt there's much promise to adopting the project-based learning framework to this technology-based and driven class. And the 5 principles that we addressed earlier were 5 also big takeaways for us. So moving forward, we know that this was an exploratory study. We would like to do additional analysis when the course is offered again. This would include individual interviews and focus group interviews with the students to see what if they feel that these principles were aligned with what was going on, and how they were supported, and how they were scaffolded, and how they could be even more so. Well, that's all I have today. I thank you so much for your patience and listening, and I'll entertain any questions now. Thank you. Have a great weekend.